You're listening to Reza Riffs with Keith Reza and Alan Lee, right here on LA Talk Radio.
Hey, Rifters. Alan's back. Alan, how are you?
I'm good. I'm very good.
Our guest tonight is actually in the waiting room. We're going to let him in. But you've seen him on Comedy Central, movie Hell Caesar. And he's a writer. He's written for amazing shows like The Jay Leno Show and Roseanne, and also for Arsenio Hall. And he's here tonight via Zoom, the great Stephen Alan Green, and we're letting him in. You ready, Alan Lee?
I sure am.
All right.
Stephen Alan Lee.
Yeah, you guys have Alan in common.
Yeah, with one L.
Oh. Stephen's connecting his audio. I met Stephen Alan Green.
Hello.
Last week.
Somewhere in Burbank.
No. If this show is just going to be a one lie after another.
Stephen Alan Green, how are you, buddy?
I'm fine, thank you. I'm fine. I've just signed a peace agreement with all my other personalities.
Oh.
Stephen, this is Alan Lee, the trusty sidekick.
How are you? Glad to meet you.
Hey, Alan, how are you?
Very good, sir.
I can hardly hear you.
I'm sorry. Very good, sir. We have to do something with that microphone. They're trying to
Yeah, blame the technology. That's sign of an amateur. You know, just about the microphones.
Stephen, I was just explaining to the folks at home where I met you. I met you last week at the Comedy Chateau. Is it the Chateau?
No, it's the Chateau.
Chateau.
And there's nothing French about it except that it used to be a French restaurant. Although you could say the comedians are rude.
I met you there, and I just clicked with you. I really liked you, so that's how I became. Well,
I'm very, very honored by that. But to be honest, everybody likes me. You're just another hanger on at this point. No, I clicked with you. I was a judge in. Can we reveal the backstage?
Oh yeah, definitely.
You were in the competition. I've been in competitions in comedy, and you were in this one. And I was an MC and a judge. Was I the MC on your set? Yeah, I was.
Yeah, you were there.
Yeah, I was MC the whole night actually, and I was also a judge.
Oh, nice.
And I thought I scored you. I think as you came in second in my list. There was just another guy slightly edged you out. And I got to be honest, I started to hate your act because I got to tell you why, because you were doing the repeat thing. And then it took me a couple of times because I'm not, it's stupid to be a judge to begin with. And then it's stupid to be a judge at an MC.
Right.
I really like to sink in, take the deep dive, as you kids say, and enjoy the vibe and the psychic presence. I'm not kidding. And then appreciate the comedian. Anyway, you got you turned everything on its head. Not like it was very Andy Kaufman like. In other words, what you were doing was obviously purposeful and conscious.
Right.
No one's asking, Stephen. No one's asking for your fucking opinion. Let the guy just say hello.
No, I'm asking.
I'm sorry. Can we do this podcast again in 6 months? Just cut it off right now.
Stephen, you could do the podcast anytime you want.
Thanks.
Yeah. I like I said, I clicked with you, and I don't usually click with people. So I think part of it was because we went through a weird adventure together. Like that show, the whole night was kind of weird. You know what I mean?
Well, I'll tell you what was weird. It definitely, I couldn't, everyone has their own experience. It was weird. And let's just call it what it was. It was a light audience and made up mainly of, it seemed like comedians and their friends. And so it could have been competition. and your friends. I mean, I understand the bringer concept. I'm not rallying against it.
No.
But a long time ago, my then girlfriend, every past girlfriend is a then girl. I can't wait to meet the new then girlfriend. She worked at Comedy Central, and she rallied. We did a bringer at Caroline's, which everyone got the word. It's closing. Sad. But Caroline's had a thing. I think it was a Monday. Anyway, she got 60 people down to see me. 60.
Wow.
Yeah, but this is a room that had other, had like it's sat 350 or something, and
yeah. But 60 is still pretty good.
60 is pretty damn good.
Yeah.
But you couldn't. I mean, here's two things. So you have a cheerleading section for every comic because their friends want them to win. That's just naturally,
Right.
That's what happens. So it's already tilted, and then it's really hard to get your own people to laugh sometimes because people are come down for a favor and they might not enjoy any of the show, and even if they enjoy you, they're already pissed off. So I mean,
and then you run out of favors, they're never going to do it again.
I mean, who could build a career on bringers? I mean, that'd be interesting. I think Elon Musk could do that. He'd just pay everyone to show up.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
But
I actually have Elon Musk disease because we both have Asperger's syndrome.
He has it? I didn't know.
Yeah. He said that on SNL when he hosted.
I've had a family member or two tell me they think I'm on the spectrum.
Oh.
And I don't know. I've asked my therapists about it. And then they shot me. But I think the thing is, Keith. Can I call you Keith? Because we're friends.
Yeah, definitely.
I've been looking into the comedy mind and the subconscious comedy mind for decades. I wrote a book in New York. I had an agent. It never got published, but I interviewed Norman Cousins, who wrote a very great book about healing through laughter called Anatomy of an Illness. Steve Allen, my namesake, Alan King, and Stephen Kravitz. And the whole premise was getting addicted. My act back in the day was, I tell every audience that I'm leaving showbiz. It's my last show. And the reason I'm leaving is I'm high. I get high on the laughter and I have to quit. It's an addiction.
Which you did some of that.
I was rushing through it.
You were rushing through it, and it felt like the audience wasn't appreciating it.
No, I mean, it's hard. I'm playing a very thin line of credibility. I want people to question it. The biggest compliment that I would get in the 80s and in the 90s in London after I did a show was, "You're not really leaving showbiz, are you?" And then back in the Comedy Store, because I had a regular Monday hosting spot and you'd have regular audience people come in. When I first started doing this, it was like, tonight, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, imagine the night. You've had literally Robin Williams, Gary Shandling, Roseanne, Stephen Wright, Andrew Dice Clay, Sam Kinison, on and on and on and on and on. Then, or they're coming later, but they know they're there. And you've seen some great comics, Bill Maher. And then I go up. Everyone's like trying to swim upstream, swim downstream and be successful. I'm swimming upstream. And I say, I'm leaving showbiz. It's like everything stops. And then like the second week I did this, there was a heckler in the back of the room who said, "You said that last week." And then I had to kind of corpse or not corpse, just sort of act like a corpse. And then I said, "Yes, I did. However, it went so well, I decided to do another one." And that it's like
however, this week I'm serious.
This week I'm serious. The first time I did it, I was serious. I went up, I was fed up. I was 5 years in at the store, and I had done every job there. I was a doorman. I didn't park cars. That's not true. But I was a doorman. I answered the phones. I was Mitzi's kind of assistant to bring her a tray full of almonds, and I worked across the street when she had offices there on various creative projects. I was an MC. I was the first writer for Paulie when he was 14. I lived at the house. I knew the family. So what was my point? I don't know.
The point is your style was daring back then. You know what I mean?
It still is, young man.
Yeah.
I think it's less now because although I think I have dulled the blades a bit.
Yeah.
Which is kind of depressing. But yeah, I was coming from a sincere place. I was fed up with dealing with what seemed like an organic mathematical conundrum, which translates as 90% of the time, maybe 85% of the time, I was killing it. I was rocking the room. I was having customers pile out at the end of the night if I was still standing there and, hey man, you were the best. And they just seen some of the most famous comics or to be famous comics in the world, but they remembered me.
Right.
And then going through that and getting some bookings and having the interest of Letterman, and everyone was hearing about this guy doing this last show. And then not being able to, other than some road work, which I enjoyed actually very much. So I got quite a bit, but not being able to turn it into a real career, what I thought was a career.
Right.
Whereas I have acts, because I've been in show business. I was 4. I acted in a commercial when I was 5, and I was a drummer for 8 years, and I was a singer-songwriter for 4. And I acted musical theater in university, and I did a lot of stuff. And I if I can't decide which one I want to do these days, so I'm kind of trying
in the mixture, like you put all of them in one, right?
I mean, I know guys that have careers like that, but anyway. So my point was, Keith, is that I wasn't mad at the industry. I wasn't really angry at certain individuals, although everyone gets screwed to some level or gets ignored. I was fed up with the universe in a way. Why tease me like this where the audience loves me? I'll give you the perfect example. So one of the things that even though I wrote jokes and sold them and they were done on television, by Jay Leno and Arsenio Hall,
right,
Walker, even though I wrote jokes that were on television getting big laughs, I always veered away from doing a standard set, which you needed to get on television. I improv with the audience. I'm very good at it. I played and sang. I have a very good voice. I did other conceptual bits. I wanted a variety act that I would want to see.
Right.
I have, somewhat of a short attention span. I guess based on the engine of that is based on curiosity. But so I never had the act. I mean, one of the biggest comedy agent in Hollywood, who then went on to turn HBO into the comedy tsunami it became, Chris Albrecht, and he handled Eddie Murphy and Jim Carrey, Jim before he was known, Eddie as he was known. And he said to me, Stephen Allen Green, he said, you're the funniest guy I know. I mean, I'm not funnier than Jim Carrey. I'm not funnier than Eddie Murphy, but he was being complimentary. So he said it that way. You're the funniest guy I know, but you have no act. And he was right, but wrong. On a conceptual level, I had the perfect act. This is why I liked you, because what I consider a comedy artist is someone who's not just proficient at, hitting home runs and pitching no hitters. It's not just someone, because, those people are few and far between, but there's always dozens of them in any market.
Right.
But there's rarely will you see someone who plays with the format of comedy. That's what always impresses me. And I think that as an art form, in order for it to survive, it has to keep evolving. And yeah.
Well,
it's funny. Go on. I'm sorry.
I was going to say that the comedy agent who said you had no act and he knows like everybody, I don't think he really knew Jim Carrey and Eddie Murphy, because in my opinion, I think those guys are better actors or comedy actors. I never thought Jim Carrey was a great stand-up, and Eddie Murphy, I thought he kind of did it, and then after his album, he kind of went to acting. You know what I mean?
Well, it depends how you define stand-up. I mean, the thing is, yeah, there are two schools to this. It's like when I moved to New York after 10 years at the store. I moved to New York, and the comics literally told me that comedy here in New York is a person, a microphone. That's it. Mm-hmm. And I was, I mean, Jim Carrey got standing ovations every night. He transformed that room. He energized it. Was he doing stand up unto itself? A little bit, but not, you're right. I mean, he's not a great stand up, but he's an entertainer.
Right. Oh, yeah. He's definitely a great entertainer. I was just talking stand up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you're right. I don't know, man. I mean, it seems like, I want to know what you guys think, because it seems to me like there's always going to be a constant tug of war between what you or one as an artist wants to do and how they want to express themselves. And if you're a McLuhanist, the medium is the message. So if you are creating an act that is apparent havoc but works, then anybody with half a brain has to say that this was planned and brilliantly planned, and therefore it is brilliant, at least in its attempt. And when I used to review comedy, I reviewed comedy for 8 years online for the Jewish Journal, and nobody had been reviewing comedy for a long time in LA, and I was, I guess, the only one consistently anyway. And so I would often see shows that didn't have much of a crowd, but I reviewed them in their ideal. And not saying, they didn't have much of a crowd. One show I even lied and I said they were sold out because they were that good.
And they did it, and they were that good for 4 people.
Well, even less. This was actually a funny story because it was a seven people in, I'm not going to name the show, but it was 7 people doing the show. Uh-huh. And so one person was on stage, the other 6 were in the audience. And then when the one person on stage was finished, he went back into the audience, and then another person in the audience came up. And this went on 6 times until the end, when they all paneled together and there was no one in the audience. I mean, this is absurd. All of it is absurd. I don't understand what people are fighting for. I mean,
see, in a way that's funny, though. You know what I mean?
In a way.
Yeah.
Oh, but that's the problem, is that people have a vision of something and they want it to be funny for the reasons that they've designed it for.
Right.
It's very few people can actually step out of what they're actually creating and see it fall on its face and laugh about it. It's hard. I've done it a few times, but I mean, laughed about it. But I can go real negative too.
Yeah. Well, if you get negative, Alan and I will make you positive.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, I got my battery here.
I'm sorry. What was that, Alan? I can't hear you.
Battery cables are a little bit tangled, but I'll try.
What do you say, Keith?
I think he's saying two negatives equal a positive.
Oh, I see. Well, that was worth going over.
Now, go ahead, Alan. Ask him.
The conversation we're having here in of itself is comedy. You know how talk show hosts, anyone, Conan O'Brien, or take Seinfeld on stage, they're just having a conversation, and that's their stand-up. And then they, they'll hit a joke. I've always found that interesting because they're not. It's stand up and talk. Can you hear me? Okay. Stand up and talk. But it's not stand up. They're just talking, which I that appeals to me. I'm lazy.
And that was our sponsor, Alan Lee. I think Steven's screwing with us. Steven.
Yeah, no, it's a good premise there, Alan. It was quite hard to hear, but Yeah. I think so. I think what I got from what you said was that it's interesting idea that talk show banter on the couch is kind of stand up but sat down.
Right.
Thank you. Very good. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. The thing is, I mean, it depends. Now this is a hot button. This is a hot button for me
Okay.
because I'm old school, and I come from the point when Johnny Carson and the Tonight Show and Dick Cavett had a panel and used it as a panel. So it was like a guest would come in, they'd interview, go to a commercial, come back, next guest, and then the first guest would move down the couch,
Yeah.
but still be in occasional camera shots,
Yeah.
and they were still mic'd. And so if they had, or the mic would boom over to them. So if they had something witty to say in response to the conversation with the host and the current guest, and it was a great mix, you know. It's kind of like what Bill Maher does a little bit with his panel, or anybody does with a panel show. It's funny because I had a conversation with Gary Coleman, who's a British comedian, producer, and a collaborator of mine. He's coming into LA next week to shoot a panel show that he's created. Anyway, we were talking about this. There are loads of comedy panel shows in the UK, you know, QI, and the Mock of the Week. I mean, you know, it's a format.
Mm-hmm.
And there was only really Graham Norton as a talk show, but he included everybody on the couch. And then my favorite was Jonathan Ross.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if he kept people on the couch, but the point is that here's what I'm saying. What I see today, I don't like. I see hosts, all of them. Well, I mean, I haven't seen many comics on these shows lately, but when they are on, it just seems that it's a script there, that it's here's what I want you to ask so and so about. You know, Byron Allen, I don't know if he still does this, but I watched this show, Comic Unleashed.
Yeah.
I wish
leashed.
It is so leashed, and he's feeding them questions. So it's it's like, hey Keith, welcome to the show. Hey Keith, what do you think about Asperger's? It just came in the news. I'm just randomly asking you. You know, it's like, well, thank you, because I have an answer. So Alan, I think it's
funny you mentioned that, Brian.
It's funny you mentioned that. And they're only bring on guests. This is another thing that bothers me about the culture, is that they only bring on comics that have something to promote.
Oh yeah.
I mean, where I don't see comics being discovered anymore. I mean, it was exciting when Jim McCauley, the comic talent coordinator from the Tonight Show, would come to the Comedy Store or the Improv specifically to watch a comic, develop the comic, work on the comic, on the script, as it were. It was an actual word for word, and then debut them on the Tonight Show. And then these comics, if they did well, and they usually did, the phone would ring off the hook for them the next morning with sitcom development deals and all kinds of stuff. So it just seems now, unless I'm missing something in the media, it just seems like right now what we're for last few years, and probably for the next projected couple of years at least, is that we're not going to see any fresh out of the comedy club comics.
Right.
Like, for example, if I was producing something, I would have gone up to you, Keith, and I would have said, listen, man, I really enjoyed what you did. I produce a talk show. So the question is, and it's up to you to answer this, do you have any friends that are really good comics that might want to do my show?
I'd be like, yeah, I know Alan Lee.
Yeah, exactly. No, I'd put you on. I'd put you on the show.
Yeah.
You know, I don't unless you have credits I don't know about. You're just a regular guy like me, and with doing our thing. And because that's how when I produced the show at the London Palladium, which was a television show at the greatest theater in the world, arguably, I brought over people that no one had heard of over there, and very few people in America had heard of, including Zach Galifianakis and Jim Gaffigan.
Now, I wanted to ask you about that when you went to London, because it seems when you went to London, like that really boosted you up,
Yeah.
shall we say. And when you bring these comics in, it seems like when you did that, there wasn't no internet. It was more word of mouth, and like, to promote it, you'd have to do radio and stuff. So how did you, accomplish something like that? Because now it seems like it would be so much easier to do that with the internet. You could just post a clip of somebody and sell it out. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I mean, you always have to look at the supply and demand of any business. So we live in a world now where the supply of content is overwhelming. The number, how much content, how many self-made cost them 50,000 from a Kickstarter, excellently produced and all that stuff. I mean, are available, and they go up on Amazon because I think you can just put it up there or something, but people are trying, so I mean, that doesn't mean, I mean, the late Bud Friedman, who just passed away, I think last week or about a week,
A couple weeks ago, yeah.
Yeah. I think he was asked one time during the comedy boom of the 80s, with so many comics now, does that mean that, there are so many more comedy geniuses? I don't know if the exact wording of this. And he said, no, it's about the same. More comics, but there's just a few that are really good. I think, so to answer your question. So basically I had like 8 months of crazy pre-production from being in LA and being in London and sometimes New York. I was trying to sell this to Comedy Central, to someone who was a Facebook friend who knew, and then somebody else I knew from a long time ago. And then I was trying to get in with the BBC because I worked for the BBC. I was on-air correspondent on the BBC Radio 2 on a comedy talk show, and I did voiceover work for them. Excuse me. So I was trying to get someone to buy it. And then at the same time, I was, I found a production company, a good one in London, and got their price, and they filmed it. We had 4 cameras, including one on a crane, or is known as a jib.
That rotates the whole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a switcher in the control room, camera 3, camera 4. And so I just went ahead with making it and producing it and figured it was going to be so high quality. And of course I had Jerry Lewis, who completely let me down and surprised me. I'm pretty sure I was going to sell it. And what Jerry did completely overshadowed the entire project for 20 years.
Yeah.
But I was able to sell, I think, about 25 minutes of it to Comedy Central UK, then known as the Paramount Comedy Channel, owned by Viacom. To the production company owned by oh my God, his name, and I just was playing his video the other day. The guy started Do They Think It's Christmas? Musician. Then we followed with We Are the World. I'm kicking myself because this guy's
I don't know.
Alan, head of the rats. Anyway, so he had a production company. I sold it to them, and they took these clips and put it on one of their shows that they had already produced, and they paid. It's just around $1,000 a minute, or no, it was around $1,700 a minute, and I split that money right down the middle with the charity we were raising for and the comedian. I didn't get a dime of that, and I didn't want a dime, and so I accomplished that. I mean, so today I don't know. I mean, there's only let me ask you guys, if you produced your own comedy special, where would you want it? Where would you want it? What platform? Would it be Netflix? Would it be HBO? Would it be Showtime? Would it be Apple Plus?
I would want it on Netflix. I mean, because I did produce my own special, and I got kind of screwed because right when it was about to come out, the pandemic hit. So
I heard about that.
Yeah, so I couldn't release it. And then the person who I was touring with at the time, he, was really good friends with the guy on Netflix. So I was 100% sure I could get it on Netflix. And then, the person I was touring with unfortunately passed away. And so now it's like, so I just released it because I thought since everyone was at home, it'd be easy to sell. I regret doing that. You know what I mean? Because
Where did you release it? On what platform?
I released it through Mad Records, and they put it on Spotify and Apple Pie and Apple Music and all that stuff. So,
Well, let me ask you this: of how many
and burned. Let's put it that way.
Well, let me just ask you. I'm just curious. How many minutes did you film?
I filmed 62 minutes.
And how long was the special?
55 minutes.
Well, you still could, you do it. If you still have, do you still have the rights to it? Did you give them permanent rights or temporary rights?
I still have the rights.
And what you should do is, well, did they have perpetual, rights to keep it broadcast somewhere? Because even if you can't get them to take it off somewhere else, I would create something new. Let's say interviews with you, or you in sketches talking about your life or your career, and cutting back to the stand-up.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be cool.
Right. And then that way you have a completely new product. And I think that you would pass the credibility test of, is this something that didn't work somewhere else and is now working that's okay too. Yeah. If you create something in Hollywood and get it on a channel no one watches, and then somewhere else.
Would you be willing to be a guest on this show?
I wasn't willing to be a guest on this show. The hell's wrong with you? Of course, I'd love to.
Awesome. Now, Steven, I wanted to ask you, that's my dog, the pizza guy must be here. I wanted to ask you one thing is, how have you seen comedy change from when you started to today? Because I'm sure when you started, there's like you said, there's Roseanne and Richard Pryor. And then you go to the Boom where there's, like Chappelle, who started in the 90s and stuff. And now today it's like, it seems to me in my generation, it's all kind of hacky in a way. You know what I mean?
Well, so I think you've got to really zoom out to answer this one correctly, because it's only theoretical. My answer is only theoretical.
Right.
Yes. Okay. So be backing off from that on a micro upfront level. Yes, I've seen the definition of stand-up comedy change over the decades. What's acceptable, and also at the time, it's also the Comedy Store was so unique because Mitzi loved variety, different types of acts, different styles, singers. I don't think she liked magicians that much, but she liked, I don't know what she liked. She liked dark, edgy Nightcrawler stuff, and she liked bright, happy Vegas stuff. And then the improv was mainly talking dudes.
Right.
But what I was going to say earlier was that so the Comedy Store and the improv their bookings were influenced by Hollywood directly. When I worked the phones at the Comedy Store, we get, hi, this is so-and-so development at ABC. We want to, we're coming in to see, we want to see these 5 comics on Thursday for a sitcom. And so Mitzi, as a courtesy and to help the comics and to, make it exciting for the audience, would put those 5 comics on. She'd also slip a couple of hers in there ahead of them, and that was something she did. But so in other words, the film industry had some, and the television industry had literally not direct say on who got booked, but had a great influence. If you zoom out now, these, there's fewer media companies. They're all merged or merging. Mm-hmm. And what we don't know is really who owns what. And the reason that's important is that they all have their own secret financial agenda. So it's not just this, like they want to make money, but they want to appeal to a certain market. They may even have psychiatric research in the back that says if you just like television has done for decades, that if you put on the news at the same time you have prescription medicines advertising, they both will feed into each other. It's kind of like the old joke where, like, a giant meteor is headed towards Earth, and we'll give you details as to when and where right after this. And then it'd be like, hi, do you have fear of living in life? Then you should take the fuck off pill. Fuck off makes you just think reality has no place in your home. The giant meteor is, so that's what they did.
Right.
So I don't know the connections, but there must be some social engineering on the part of whether they know it or not, of giant media. So, for example, let's say Netflix has put in $500 million into making films that are designed for a 35 to 55-year-old audience.
Mm-hmm.
That's the market. And they make a decision ahead of time, or that they consider films and they go, well, we don't really have that market. Let's try to get that chunk of the market. Well, they're hoping that that chunk of the market will come to watch those films.
Right.
That's what they want. But there's a fine line between baiting the audience to come in and capturing the audience. And so if they think, well, maybe we should also, if we got a comic who was 60 years old, then that would draw in a lot of, we used to look at the numbers and, the comedy specials, we got, 10 million people watching these a week. So we could drop in some advertising on the movie,
Right.
We can cross promote what else we're doing. And you know what? We all do that. You and I do that on some micro level, about wanting to maintain what we envision and wanting to keep the audience there. So anyway, back to the original question, what have I, so in other words, I don't know what's completely influencing, sorry, Stephen, the decisions on which comics to book.
Right.
But I do, in answer to your question of comic style, I think that basically in my day, I come from sort of an entertainment era.
Mm-hmm.
And these days it seems to be more documentarian, and authenticity is more the premium.
Right.
And so that's why we have a lot of representation going on, as well as just the social political pressure and desire to do the right thing. We're going to feature a gay comic. We're going to feature a comic with autism. We're going to, we're going to do that. That's great. But I do think part of that comes out of this, what seems like a fight against, when I've heard some tinfoil hat people talk about, we're living in a simulation. If enough people believe that, then we are.
Right.
And so they want to counter that with authenticity. It seems like we're seeing the working class, because a lot more of us are working class. We're poorer now, and we're working more hours doing, the gig economy. So it's not so much as it used to be, where it was about forgetting the world.
Right.
And, life is a cabaret, close the doors, let's have fun, and now it just seems to be sort of, we're in a bunker in Berlin somewhere and trying to figure out the world on some sort of weird existential level. In other words, it takes a lot more, I think, for someone to really be funny now. And I think that when they are, it's noticeable, more noticeable. You can get a lot of laughs and not necessarily be funny. That's a whole rabbit hole of a conversation.
Right. Alan, you got any last second questions for the great Stephen Allen Green?
I've talked so much. We can't be over already.
No,
I
but
want to hear,
Alan
I want to
has
hear
a
more
question.
questions.
We gotta give him a question.
It's
Been
interesting
patient.
the way this is going, and
Can't hear you, Alan. Seriously.
can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Well, it's just this laptop. Again, the idea of building a following on platforms like YouTube, like Patton Oswalt held up his iPhone at a comedy convention when he was talking, and he says, "Guys, you don't need a stage. It's in your pocket. It's in your hand." And he held up the iPhone and he said, "Here it is. Get on it, do your act, edit it, and shoot it out there into the internet." And YouTube is somewhat of an example of that. I watch a lot of these guys just sitting in their pajamas and their bathrobe and so forth, and just talking, as I said earlier, or having a series of funny bits. And I think that's part of the wave of the future, is this whole individualistic thing of we just say and do what the fuck we want to do. And we don't even care. We don't.
Yeah, but I mean, is it it's maybe the wave of the future, Alan, but it's not, I don't think anyone will ever replace live communal comedy.
Yeah. No,
ever. Or
that,
theater.
Yeah. No, that I don't want to go away. No. I'm just saying that the accessibility to shoot your own stuff for very little is something that is, you got to admit, that did not exist before. You had to have
Well, it did. I mean, when I grew up, we all had Super 8 cameras, and I had a reel-to-reel recorder, and obviously distribution would be very limited compared to what it is today. But I want to be clear about something. Not to piss on anyone's campfire, but distribution is probably the most abused word in Hollywood, or next to released.
Right.
I mean, there's a reason why people want to get on Netflix or Amazon or have a hit on YouTube. I mean, YouTube is more democratic, I think, but still, they pour hundreds of thousands into advertising and getting the profile up. So it's kind of where I think we're at, was like kind of like we have kind of like this immense, infinite Terry Gilliam Brazil type of old-fashioned dusty book library, the 1,000 floors of the spiral staircase. And what good does that do anybody in a sense? Having said that, there have been some viral successes that came organically. People heard about it and told someone else and heard about it. So in a way, excuse me, the internet is the perfect sifter because it builds on popularity and awareness.
Right.
I mean, there's so many Hollywood stories about, $100 million films that nobody sees. So, and despite $50 million to advertise, nobody went.
So
and then you question if the movie even did exist. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the jester still needs a king occasionally.
I'm sorry, what? I can't hear you.
So the jester still needs a king. He needs a king to distribute his work. Or
I got it. I think it's I think it's preferable.
Yeah.
I mean, you want to have an advocate, and you want to have a brand to you. I mean, I'm proud that even though I don't work there, I'm proud that I'm a Comedy Store comic.
No.
That's kind of a big deal to some people.
Of course.
It's a big deal. I think it's a great big deal because, like, my name's never going to get on the wall.
How do you know?
Well, because I don't go to the Comedy Store, and I'm not really into playing politics. You know what I mean? I just want to do stand up.
Yeah, I mean, I understand what you mean by that, but I don't. There's always been politics in stand up. There still is at every level.
100%. But like that show, for example, that I did and I met you. You know, I'm being judged on my comedy, and of course I want to win. But at the end of the day, if I do win, even if I win this whole contest, is it going to change my career? That's what you have, and the answer is no.
Well, the answer and that kind of contest, the answer is no, because you're not being offered a development deal. But here's the thing, I mean, Steve Martin famously said, if you want to make it, just be undeniably good. And when I first got to England, everything that I'd already been doing in America that had worked most of the time made me, I always say, semi-famous over there. I worked everywhere. Yeah. I hosted Comedy Central over there. I headlined, main comic, handled by big agencies and stuff. So, I mean, just naturally what I brought to the comedy party was enjoyed by a lot of people. And that made me feel good. And it made me feel like I had a career. And then when I came back to America in 2009, I had no connections anymore. Every club that I used to work in the 80s was sold, or the owner wasn't there, we've got new people now, right. There wasn't much sentiment for me, there really wasn't. And, I think I might've taken it a little too personally, but and then, I went on the storytelling circuit instead. And then I, came back and did the open mics, and then COVID hit, and I had a long time to think about myself and what I bring to the table.
Right.
And I came out of it a better comic and determined to become better, and determined to cut ties with venues that weren't serving me well, and to concentrate on the campfires I was lucky to find in the cold forest of anonymity, and develop those relationships.
Yeah.
And, I'm well known for having issues of self-doubt and depression and serious dark thoughts. And I know that, what I need is what I've been fed all my life, which is a live, enthusiastic live audience. Since I was a kid, I had that.
Right.
And so I do it for that. And then I finally, on this little speech, I see myself as an entertainer. In other words, it's my job as the entertainer's job is to make the public happier than they were before they came on stage. It's about making them happy. It's not about my ego. It's not about I killed. It's not about I won a contest. It's not about anything.
Yeah.
Other than that.
And I think that's another thing. Like I really am drawn to you, because I feel the exact same way. Like, I just want to make people laugh, and that's all I want to do. You know what I mean?
Well, perhaps that's your problem, because what you want to do as a comic is you want to make them laugh, but you want to make them feel something.
Yeah.
You want to awaken. They've been deadening their souls all week with their jobs and their responsibilities and their social media. And they go to a comedy club to escape, and they're laughing, but you want to change them a little bit. You want to hook in their being with humanity, with a little bit of humanity, empathy for you, empathy for them. But I mean, essentially just to make them laugh. But ultimately that becomes the most expensive, hard to get drug in the world, is the laughs, because you can't get them without the comedy club or a producer organizing an audience for you. Yeah. At this point.
No, 100%.
Steven, what are your plans? What do you, let me ask you.
Okay.
What are your plans to New Year's coming up? how are you gonna reapproach the Keith Reza comedy business? What are you gonna do?
Well, every single year I make goals. I write on Argus Hamilton actually told me this. You write 5 goals on a piece of paper. He said a month, but I like to do a year because I think that's more realistic. So I write 5 goals on a piece of paper, and my goal for that year is to accomplish those goals. You know,
What kind of goals are they?
well, like
We're growing extra arm out of my head.
No, like get past at the Hollywood Improv, film a new special, write 20 more jokes, try and interview John Cusack, lose 30 pounds, like just goals that you write down and you think, okay, if I accomplish this, that is a piece of me. And that is what really means a lot to me, is giving myself what I could give people by making them laugh.
I like that. So as you approach each of these goals, I mean, you see, with me, I'd be in trouble. Like, if I filmed my special, for example, and I was happy and my friends took me out for celebratory pizza, I'd be then, wait a minute, that doesn't live up to my other goal of losing weight.
Right.
But also, I mean, the thing is, the kind of goal you got 2 different types of goals here. I think. I mean, to get booked at the Hollywood Improv requires, obviously, to get, if you have a solid 15 minutes that kills every time, every joke. I tell my writing clients this, who say, well, I got a solid 15 minutes. And I go, no, you don't.
Right.
I mean, you do, but, look at your best jokes, the 5 best jokes of that 15 minutes. All of your jokes should be that standard through the entire 15 minutes. And you should have another 15 to 30 minutes behind it. So no,
100%. Like I said, I have an hour special, and I feel in my heart, it's it's great. I love it. But like what you just said, you need that great 15 minutes. In an hour, you have what, 4 15-minute sets? If I'm being 100% real with you, I would not use 3 of those 15-minute sets at an improv showcase thing. Does that make sense? Even though I know I have it and I know it's good, I would only use the good 15 minutes.
Okay, so is your goal to get a 15-minute? I mean, is your goal to get an improv showcase?
No, I want to be past at the improv. I was just explaining.
So hang on. So I mean, that should be one goal then, because I mean, that goal's too high because it involves someone else's opinion,
right?
And we have no control of other people's opinions unless we put a gun to their head.
Yeah. So you're saying
that was dark.
My goal should be to take the booker out for a steak dinner.
No. What I'm saying is, forgive me for that terrible thing I just said. God, please forgive me. Sorry, what, Alan?
I just purchased a Smith & Wesson 38 special.
So. Okay, cool for you. Good for you. I'm sure with you, I can't hear your voice at all, so I'm sure you got a silencer with it. But what you should do, maybe, is you got to think a little politically. So, I mean, try to get into Flappers. I'm producing a show in Flappers in February, a regular show.
Oh, okay.
And also try to produce a show at the Lab. Maybe, don't be offended at this. I'm just riffing with a little bit about, I know about you. So let's say comedians with Asperger's or whatever. Yeah. I mean,
it'll
it sounds
like a night with Keith Reza and Stephen Allen Green.
Yeah, basically.
Charity. I tell him do it. Asperger's charity. You did do it. I thought you did.
That's not a bad idea.
I did do that. I did do that. Yeah.
But the point is, Alan, is to try. If here's the key. Okay, I think, and I've got a script with an Oscar-winning producer about me in London with Jerry Lewis, and all that happened. That made international news. Hit one-man show in Edinburgh, and then Oscar-winning producer sees it and got it. We have this fabulous, really funny script that I rewrote with my mate in England, and I sat with Zach Galifianakis in his car, and he was on the show that this movie's about and said, I would love to play you in the movie.
Oh my God.
So yeah, well, he said intriguing. I pitched it to him and he went, that's really an intriguing idea. Contact my agent. But I'm just chasing these agents.
Yeah.
And I understand from their point of view, 1 million people run into Zach a day. And he says, contact my agent. So there is that. But and there's so many more mechanics to it.
That's still a great I find that a great compliment. So congratulations, man.
Well, thank you. I'm not quite sure if it was a compliment or I knew him. He stayed in my flat in London. I brought him to Edinburgh in 2000, and then I brought him to the London Palladium in 2002. I'm talking about, a proper booking with business class and, great hotel. And
before The Hangover too.
Oh, he was, well before he was known.
Yeah.
Anyway, he doesn't owe me anything. He already paid me by being on those shows. Yeah. But what I'm just trying to make a wider point about Hollywood and expectations. And expectations are great, but they can get the better of you. Mm-hmm. If you start thinking, first of all, big lesson I had to learn. There's no such thing as a return favor in this business. No such thing. No such thing. I booked you at my show and I expected to. I hate that anyway. I think people should book who the fuck they want, not who they are guilted into booking. But it's that. But also, there's no guarantees to this. You're not making a deal up front going, hey, Keith, listen, if I book you on my show at Flappers, will you book me on your show at the Improv? I would never ask you that question. I would think it would be an insulting question.
Right.
And I wouldn't want that as a criteria as to why I got booked. I want to get booked because someone likes what I do.
Well, if I ever do get an improv show, I'll definitely book you because, like I said, when I saw you at the comedy cha-cha or whatever it's called,
comedy choo-choo,
I understood what you were doing and I liked it. And
thank you.
I thought it was funny. And I thought there was a couple times when I was laughing where maybe you thought I was being not sincere, but I actually thought it was really funny.
I couldn't hear you. I couldn't hear any individual laugh.
Oh, but I liked that one joke. It was like the second or third comic after he got off stage. You're like, all right, there's the blonde Sal Goodman. And nobody got it. And I just thought that was hilarious.
Did I say that?
Yeah. I thought it was so funny.
Saul Goodman.
Yeah. Like from Better Call Saul.
Did I say that?
Yeah. And I just thought it was hilarious because
wow.
That was in the moment brilliant.
Well, yeah, no, I did a lot of that. And the other thing was this was a really weird thing because Dante, who runs the contest, wanted me to give everybody the same introduction. Just make
and then
up
you were doing the Netflix, but he didn't film it or something.
Yeah, so every it was an absurd scenario. Every contestant had a Netflix special, but then I fucked with it. Our next comic has a Netflix special. Unfortunately, it's on Hulu. Our next comic has a Netflix special. Unfortunately, it's a drama. Our next guest has a Netflix special. Unfortunately, it's on Netflix. So it was just like over and over and over again. And I felt like the audience was a little butthurt on those. I was like, wait a minute, everybody. Funny. I'm doing as I'm told.
No, Stephen, I want to respect your time, but I do have two quick questions for you if I can.
Yeah, let's just go for another 5 minutes, and if that'd be all right.
Yeah. So my first question is, what is it like working with Dave Cyrus? Like, do you like it? Because I think he's a great writer, and I know you've done some stuff for him.
Well, I think Dave is the finest joke writer in the country. I mean, there's some really good ones. There's still Emo and Leno and the other guys, the writers.
Yeah.
Jeff Martyr is very funny. Wendy Liebman.
I love Wendy.
Yeah, but I think Dave has incredible courage, and he has an incredible moral insight to complex issues. Mm-hmm. And he just doesn't give a fuck what you think, except he's delivering you the best joke. So what's it like working with him? Well, I mean, my experience with Dave was a singular one, although we're still friends and we still see each other, and he'll help me out with a project now and then, you know.
Yeah.
But I was an actor playing the title role of a mockumentary he made called Archie Black the Worst, and so he created this mythical comedian named Archie Black. But first, he filmed all these comedians, including Pete Davidson, who was a friend, and Otto and George, and my friend Rich Scheidner, and there were dozens of comedians in this mockumentary, talking about the worst comedian ever, and he was a bad human being. Yeah, he stole my girlfriend and then my coke and all that stuff. So it came time to cast Archie Black, and as Dave said on my San Francisco live internet radio show, he said, basically, he was looking for someone to play the worst comedian of all time, and someone recommended me. Said, no. Dave said, "Why get someone to play the worst comedian? I'll get the worst comedian of all time." So, because actually, I did have to endure that. I mean, as brilliant as the Brits say I am, most of them, you know, I have people that just think I'm the worst,
Right.
and I have to respect those opinions as well. And sometimes I think I'm the worst. So I mean, working with him, making the film was really fun. We drove from LA to San Francisco in his car to film it up there, and he talked the whole fucking time, and like emphatically and slamming the dashboard as we're on the 5 going through the grapevine, making points. You know, do you realize that 90% of Americans have never read a book? Do you realize this? You know, and he's just losing his fucking mind. But he was really loose as a director.
Yeah.
He let me improvise a lot. And what I liked about being filmed by Dave was that even if like I'm improvising and the comedy premise is really not working, he'll use it if there's something awkwardly appealing about it.
Right.
So once you understand that about him, then you kind of, the key is and I've directed a film before, but I know the psychology, but the key is not to let the actor know really what you're looking for. You've got to kind of lead them onto it or almost trick them into it, because if they're conscious of what you're looking for, they're going to be trying to find what you're looking for, and they'll never find it, and they'll be distracted from the character.
Right.
So Dave was very knowledgeable, very bright guy, and I love Dave. He's just, you know, he's been good to me.
That's really awesome to hear, because like I said, I think he's a great writer, and I actually interviewed him, and I just fell in love with him. I thought he was a great dude.
He's one of the best. He's just one of the best. He's a mensch, and he's so young and thin and loved. You know, I mean, who wouldn't want to be him? You know, so and he's got such a dark take on shit too, which I love. What's your next question? Then we'll wrap it up, I guess.
Well, my last question was, I wanted to ask you, when you started writing for like guys like Pauly Shore and Jimmy Walker and Arsenio, how did that change your views on stand-up? Because you're going in as a writer.
It didn't. Not at first. At first, see, my problem was I just psychologically didn't know who I was. I had been in a denial life from a lot of trauma and bad parenting and living in my fantasy world. So I didn't have consistent training as a human. So you know, I was never, I was never really able to write for myself, to see myself as a character.
Right.
And maybe that has nothing to do with upbringing. I think that's actually the engine that drives it, because like I write for comics today, working comics, pay me money, do my jokes. It's a great feeling. Back when I started, I think, well, first of all, it was kind of like, you know, I know this joke has got a sell by date of about 5 days. You know, this person's on television. There's money involved. Boom. When people would each individual client or comic client is different.
Right.
Jimmy Walker, for example, he said, I need 40 jokes and I'll give you $500. 40 jokes by next week. I said, what about whatever you want? Things in the news, whatever. So I wrote 40 jokes. He looked at the paper. He laughed. He said, great. You got to raise to 750, 40 more by next week. So there wasn't really much collaboration between me and him. I think he collaborated more with a couple of other writers, like sat down and you know, with Dynamite. With Arsenio, it was a fluke, basically. I was running to the Comedy Store to pick up my paycheck, and I ran, just was walking by Mitzi and Arsenio talking, and I said, hey, happy Christmas. By the way, listen, I don't want to interrupt, but do you guys hear the news? And they go, what? And they go, well, President Bush invaded Manuel Noriega's stronghold in Panama, and they found all this blood and devil worshiping stuff and, you know, vials of urine and weird candles and shit. And it turns out it wasn't Manuel Noriega's stronghold. It was Sam Kinnison's summer home. And they loved it. And Arsenio said, I'm going to use that joke. And I said, fine, call me. So he used that joke as the opening gambit on his second season, first show, which was a big deal. It was a big deal for him and a huge deal for African Americans to have a national platform be renewed, not just given a token year, but actually the network's committing to another year. And he used that joke, and I was extremely honored. He did it greatly. And then when it came down to working with him, he basically, we had a conversation on the phone where he was telling me I need jokes like this and I need jokes like that, and so it's all very different. I have some clients that just buy one joke,
Right.
for like as much as $300 for a joke, and I have other clients that want me to write 100 jokes for $100. And it, you know, I mean, I wouldn't do that, but you know, like 50 jokes for $200, something like that. It's not great money, but the real question is, you're not asking me about money. I'm sorry. We're talking about, I can see someone else's character. Okay. I want you to edit all that other shit out because it's boring. It's just unimportant.
No, I didn't think it was boring. I thought it was very interesting.
Okay.
That's all I care about.
Okay. Yeah. So I would look at someone's character, a stage character, and I'd see I see who they are, their identification, and the dilemma they're in. So it's an African-American comic. Then his dilemma is that he's living in a white man's world. Still African-American living in a white man's world. Now it's an African-American living in a white man's world. And there are a whole group of other African-Americans that he doesn't agree with. So that's the world he's in. That's his character, like a movie. It's like I tell my comedy students, you are a star in your own short film. We want to know who you are. And the next thing we want to know is your dilemma. And that's what we'll get inspired to write your jokes. And then I tell them, these are the students. These aren't the ones that are hiring me to write jokes. They already know this shit, or they've made their decisions. But I tell them how to do it. Like, your second joke defines your originality if it repeats the first pattern, things like that. But I try to just do what people hire me to do. If someone says I'm playing a senior citizen's home next week, it's got to be clean, no hip references, no pop culture, no dark comedy. I could do that. It's what you want. That's how you want your pizza. I'll deliver it. I'll make that pizza and get it to you. I love that. That's the servant in me who can do this, because I have perspective of, like we all do, of other people.
Right. And I think that's so interesting, because like when I wrote for Norm would used to tell me, okay, here's the jokes I want. Are they funny? And if they're not funny, are they really, really bad so we can make them funny?
I like that.
So that was like,
I like that.
So that's how I'm trained to write jokes, but I could never write jokes and it was easy with Norm because, I toured with him for so long that I knew exactly what would work, but like I could never write jokes for Arsenio or anything like that,
Well, yeah, you could. It depends. I mean, we're talking about monologue jokes. I'm talking about monologue jokes. So
yeah,
it's a joke that Arsenio would buy. It's a joke that if I wrote today, which I do write these today, that Kimmel would want, that Fallon would want, that Colbert would want, that Myers would want, that Corden would want. It's got to be that quality, that good,
right?
That they would want it. In other words, the worst of their reaction is that they laugh in the writer's room, but go, we can't do this. That's the worst. The best is we can't do this, but we're going to anyway.
Well, Stephen, I want to respect your time. Thanks for riffing with us. Where can the folks at home follow and support you?
Thank you very much for having me, both Keith and Ellen. Facebook's a good place. I'm Sagman at Twitter. I'm Stephen Allen Green on Instagram and StephenAllenGreen.com or legendcomedian.com. I want to point out legends in quotes. I don't really mean it. And I do Wednesday on the intranet here at 2 p.m. Pacific, Comedy Dish with my co-host Rick Wright in England. And we'll have to get you on as a guest. And Real Comedy Stories. The Real Comedy Stories is going to be at Flappers in February, third Friday of the month, third Thursday of the month. I got to get that date, but we're moving it from the Ren. The next show at the Ren is December 16th. I don't know when this goes out. That's on Vine, 8 p.m. Friday. Real Comedy Stories. I'm hosting that. If they want to find me, they can get all that information. Usually it's just on my Facebook. I'm hesitant to go to update my website. Before we go, can I just ask a quick question?
Of course, Stephen.
Where did I go wrong in life? No, answer it. Take as much time as you need.
I think you've done nothing wrong in life, and I think you've had a great life, and I think you're going to continue having a great life. And your
God bless you, Keith.
Amazing.
God bless you, Keith. You're my Christmas gift as my new best friend. I really mean that. Thank you. And Alan, one day I'd like to meet you and hear you talk.
In the making.
Say again.
It's in the making.
It's in the making. What the fuck is he talking about now? No, I'm kidding. All right. Thank you. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen.
Have a great night, buddy.
You too, man. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, guys. That was the interview with Stephen Allen Green. Subscribe, rate, and review, and we'll see you guys next week.
You're listening to Reza Riffs with Keith Reza and Alan Lee, right here on LA Talk Radio.